Hey everybody, this is Silver Spook, and this is the Silver Spook video about the U.S. reindustrialization that is not going to happen without total system change, and why Trump's plan is just tariff apocalypse. So, anyways, yes, why this is not going to work. Um, Last week I made a video about how Neofeud is here, but that there's a solution to it, and this is kind of almost a part two of that. The failure to, or the, and also the how the tariffs are backfiring, and this is kind of a continuation of how they continue, obviously, to massively backfire against a lot of people, but especially the U.S. and anyone who goes along with these policies, and anyone who is allied with them. So yeah, it's not doing good. I hope everybody's doing okay out there with the paying $30,000 for your iPhone. Not quite yet, but yeah. So just a quick update since last week. The tariff war, I guess that's what they're calling it, the tariff war. It's more of a tariff self-own, in my opinion, but that Donald Trump started out with, I think it was 30-something% tariffs, and then it escalated to, I forget, 50, 80%. The whole world got these tariffs, at various percentages. So, I forget, Mexico and Canada, EU, everyone around the world. What's up with these tariffs? People have pointed out since last week that the way that the tariffs are calculated was using a completely bogus method of completely bogus math. So basically, it was taking the deficit, or like how much trade a country was doing with the United States, the imports versus exports, and based upon the current account deficit, and some really basic calculation, it was coming up with a number that was the amount the U.S. was applying in tariffs on that country. So it's basically completely arbitrary. It would have been about as it would make about as much sense as the United States like pulling a number out of a hat, and then saying, well, that's your tariffs today, right? It'd be like if the United States said, well, let's count like how many stars are in your flag, multiply it by 10, that's your tariff percentage, right? China has 5 stars in their flag, and you have 50% tariff. Well, yeah, the U.S. has 50 stars in their flag, so that'd be 500%. But the U.S. is exceptional; they don't get any tariffs, and they shouldn't get any because they're the best, right? So and it'd be like going like, okay, well, Vietnam has 1 star in its flag, so you get 10%, right? I just as an example, or like we'll take the total population of your country and we'll divide it by, a million, or we'll take the total population of your country divided by the total number of, cars in your country, and that's your tariff percent. So like, European countries, you have a lot less cars than people relative, and so now you get, so you're gonna get a 30% tariff. Japan, you get a little bit less because you have slightly more cars. And so that my point is that like the number that they came up with is basically another way to illustrate that is the way they came up with this tariff number is by if you went to your baker and the baker sells you bread, right? Or you go to a restaurant and you buy hamburgers from it, and then you say, well, I've spent so much money on hamburgers. I've spent hundreds or thousands of dollars on on your hamburgers or your bread at the bakery or at the burger shop. So because of that, I'm putting a tariff on you. So now you're gonna have to, you're gonna have to pay a tax on all your bread and your burgers because you sold me so many burgers, right? This is absolute nonsense, right? It's just like, that's not how the world works. Like people don't. Every person doesn't do business directly with only one person or one entity. It's this global trade that goes in a whole host of directions. Like even in a town, right? You work for a company, the company pays you money, you take some of that money, you pay for burgers. The burger company pays that employee money. They go to auto shop and get Jiffy Lube, and then the Jiffy Lube, pays their worker money. They take some of that money, they pay rent, for housing, and there's no direct exact balance of trade with every single person and entity that you're trading with. But that's the way that they're calculating this tariff. So it's just nonsense. It was just pulled out of a hat. It's kind of like, as some people are pointing out, like it makes the United States seem idiotic, moronic, incompetent, unstable. It's like it's cacostocratic, in the sense that it is ruled by the most incompetent, not smart, and the least qualified, and also the most malicious, the worst, because it's unclear exactly what the goal. There's a lot of discussion about what is the goal of the tariffs, right? Is it reindustrialization? Like, is the goal of this? Is the goal of the tariffs to actually bring manufacturing factories? There's some, but the U.S. has been largely gutted in terms of its production of cars and various other consumer goods relative to what it used to be in the 20th century. So is the goal to make the Rust Belt the Steel Belt again? Is it to bring the cars back, to make phones in America, to make make America great again by making textiles and Nike shoes and Unitree level robots and BYD level cars? You want to make electric vehicles? Is that really the goal? That's the stated goal. One of the stated goals is America is gonna, as some economists have pointed out, if you have, I think I pointed out last week as well, if you have a like fledgling industry, like you are trying to produce cars and sell those cars, and other countries have cars that they're producing, and maybe they're producing better cars at lower prices than you at the moment, and you have like a potential competitor inside your country, you might put a tariff, and these exist in the world. They have existed for many, many years and the decades, the centuries. You might put a tariff on imported cars because you're trying to sell, to build your car company's business up in your country, and that could so if you import a bunch of Toyotas and you had a GM, just as an example, and it's like Toyota's directly competing in the same market as your American car company, you could this is a hypothetical, you could put a tariff on that car at a certain percent, and then people would say, well, I'm not going to buy that Toyota at 50,000 or 60 or 80,000 or whatever. When you count the tariff, I'm going to buy the American-made GM car. This is like really, really hypothetical, like in alternate reality, not where we are right now. I buy the GM car at 50,000 rather than the Toyota at 80. Right? Let's say the Toyota made a car that's equivalent to a GM car, and it was directly competing, and the GM car it cost 50,000 to it was 50,000 sale price, and the Toyota was 40. Right? If the U.S. put a big tariff to push the Japanese car all the way up to 70, 80,000, then people would choose to buy the GM, and that could work if the U.S. already had, right, equivalent equivalent domestic production ready to go, like right now, right? I mean, like, then if you had those cars coming off the assembly line out of the manufacturing plants, then the U.S. could potentially sell those American-made vehicles, and it would grow that business, right? But the problem, and obviously the problem is that's not what is happening. Also, what's up, Victor? That's not what is happening, right? The United States, the United States does not have the capacity to even try. Now, obviously, the other thing to mention is the country they're competing with largely is China. Obviously, there's manufacturing happening around the world, but China is the world's biggest manufacturer. It is a peer competitor of the United States in the world. In purchasing power parity terms, in the nominal terms, the United States has a slight edge on China in terms of GDP size, but in actual purchasing power parity terms, China is well beyond the United States. By some estimations, it's 2 or 3 times the size of the U.S. economy. And so this is the number one target of the U.S. And obviously, in the last week, another thing that's happened is the U.S. announced it was going to put all kind of tariffs on all countries around the world. I think the European Union was 25%. Mexico was 20, 30%. I forget exactly what it was. Canada was going to have 20, 30. I think less than 50%, but it was more than 10%. And the whole world has a 10% tariff right now that the U.S. has put in place, and now, so the whole world has a 10% tariff across the board. I think it's basically all countries, and then also they added those additional tariffs that are based on this completely bogus nonsense calculation that I just talked about earlier. But I think, but since then, the U.S. has removed that additional tariff, and it's dropped them all back to 10%. But it's kept the tariffs on China at, I think it was 80%, then it went to 84%, and then the next day it was like 100%, and then it was 124%. I forget where it is. It was at like 150% now. So the U.S. has kept ratcheting. Every day Trump was just ratcheting up this the tariff rate to higher and higher levels. He's just playing chicken with it. Donald Trump brought an economic potato shooter to a ion cannon fight when it comes to U.S. versus China, because the U.S. is nothing really compared to China certainly in terms of economic. The U.S. rivals. The U.S. has China beat when it comes to hubris, copium production, narco opium production, opioid production. The U.S. has China beat. They do all of that and traffic it into themselves as the number one narco trafficker. The U.S. has China beat on wasted money on broken military equipment, colonialism, imperialism, bigotry, genocide. U.S. has China beat in all that. But when it comes to economic production of anything useful, it's not even close. But the U.S. likes to talk a lot. The West, it has China beat on propaganda and lying and overhyping and overestimating itself and trying to get other people to believe in its own superhero mirage version of itself, right? And the U.S. is going to confront China, and the whole world is going to rally behind U.S. to confront China, and China's economy is going to collapse as everyone abandons China's trade, and then China's regime will be changed, and that is the goal of the U.S. empire and the imperialists and neocons and Dr. Strangelove, etc., that run the U.S. and the historical colonial imperial powers, including the European Union. That's where they're in a weird place, because the U.S. is attacking their own the U.S. is attacking its own sidekicks at the moment, and so that's where China is actually trying to see what it can accomplish by partnering with, or not necessarily partnering with, but like encouraging the EU to perhaps trade with China as a way to even survive the United States' cannibalization of its European partners. And so that's we're not sure where that's going to go yet, because Europe has a lot of it's in a many different it's in a lot of turmoil, and it's a lot of self-questioning. What is it really about? What is it really doing at this point? I think it's also in the losing war with Russia, so that's a whole other aspect that it's got to deal with. Its economy is collapsing as well because of its mistakes. So, but anyway, that's not really the central question. The question is like, what will U.S. reindustrialize or not? And so let me try and stick to the plan here and just finish this out. So, obviously, what I said is not without total system change, and why Trump's plan is tariff-pocalypse. So, let me go through why the U.S. won't reindustrialize. I spent about 2 hours yesterday morning writing out exactly why the United States will not industrialize. Or maybe it was Thursday. But I spent a good it was either yesterday or Thursday. I spent 2 hours. I had these thoughts over the last 2 weeks, and I just be like, I got to just write this out as a Twitter thread. So let's go through that really quick, and this will give you the basic gist of what my argument on, or my thoughts on this, not necessarily my argument. Okay, so how the U.S. could industrialize for real. Okay, number one, overturn the plutocracy of wealthy elites that control the government and all aspects of society. They rake in more dollars with private equity, selling hype, and being a tapeworm in the anemic economy than making things. Nobody is going to make things in the United States, because the people that control all of the United States, the culture, the economy, the flow of wealth, the flow of money, what gets built where, as Richard Wolff, the Marxist American economist, would say, what to produce, how to produce, where to produce, what to do with profits, all controlled by the capitalist class, the people that have the vast majority of the stocks, right? They may, as much as they're screaming about this, right? Trump's donor class, the blue bloods that are over there owning all the billionaires and millionaires that own all these stocks, they are very upset that the stock market, multiple stock markets, but definitely the U.S. stock market is exploding this week. But they are still in power, so they still run the United States. The oligarchy still runs the United States, and they are in the collapsar Neofeudal. Shout out, as I said, Neofeud's on sale this week, so you want to learn more about Neofeud and what that means. And also, if you like playing retro adventure cyberpunk satirical games that are described as the secretly the greatest and also funniest cyberpunk game on Steam, don't forget to get Neofeud and discover what Neofeudalism really is. This is like 9 out of 10 Yanis Varoufakis is recommended. But Neofeud is a game that is in part science fiction or speculative fiction about where the U.S. was heading when I made it in early 2010s, right? Which is to it is deindustrialized, right? And then it is increasingly, there's industrial capitalism where money is invested as a country, as an economy is building automotive plants, building roads, building rail, building housing, building infrastructure, right? That will be used as the veins and the vessels and the organs and the intestines and the hearts of a beating, thriving economy that's growing, right? And the capitalists make money as that grows, right? That's happened in the 1800s United States, United States, and certainly in a lot of the 20th century, there was growth in the United States. Every time we built a new auto plant, people got jobs, people made more money, um, and the capitalist class that owned Ford Auto Company also made money, right? And the economy was growing. And obviously, you could also grow it without having the capitalism that's parasitic, right? Like as you if you're growing bigger, right? A tapeworm can eat the food in your stomach, and you're not going to go quite as big as you would have if the tapeworm wasn't in your stomach. The tapeworm is the metaphor for the parasitic, capital owners, right? That take profit off of what is produced based upon having money as a pre-existing condition. That's basically all they have. That's what Elon has, right? So you could there could be more growth under socialism or a non-capitalist system, but there is still growth under a capitalist system, and depending on how much they take. Now, if the capitalists take too much, if the tapeworm takes 95% of your food, then the body dies, the host dies, the parasite dies with the dead host, right? But if the tapeworm takes 20%, the host can still live and grow. It doesn't grow quite as big, but it's still growing. So the U.S. was growing for the last, centuries, and capitalists got rich. Now, once you have your country is highly developed, and the capitalists still need to make money, and they couldn't decide, which they sometimes do, that we're going to go into it has sometimes they call it financialized capitalism. They have post-industrial capitalism. They call it the neoliberal era is kind of like that phase where the U.S. started moving the industry. For example, GM, Ford, factories stopped making things. Started talking about system analysts. Talking about, right, a lot more people were working in as David Graeber called it, BS jobs, right? Financialization, finance, insurance, and real estate taking off. People getting, less people making things, more people going to conferences, sending emails and TPS reports, and just pushing paperwork around that takes money from people who were making things or made some things, turning everything into debt, credit cards, moving money around, hoping that all of this doesn't catch up to you. And but that's not actually producing things that people need, like cars, food, phones, robots, unitary robots, DJI drones. You're not producing clothes, right? You're just moving money around, or you're moving propaganda around sometimes, right? That's a lot of what you're doing. And so that's the last 40 years for sure of the United States has been deindustrialization. Now, if you keep doing that, and then you get private equity, which is just basically taking companies, and that kind of thing has been done for a while. So what they did to GM in the beginning, where you're basically saying, well, we're gonna make less cars, and we're gonna pay less to the employees. We're gonna charge more for what we were charging before, which hurts the consumers, which makes you more immiserated and poorer, and that's why everybody feels so poor in the United States. And the boomers and Gen Xers basically survived on having massive amounts of debt and accumulated wealth. Some of them, for millennial and Gen Z and Gen Alpha, there is, there's that's run out. So there's just basically just suffering and immiseration for the millennial, Gen Z, and Gen Alpha. And then the boomers and Gen X, right? Why aren't these younger generations consuming but eating so much? Why are they eating all this avocado toast? Or why don't they spend more on vacations? Like, don't they like vacations and golf courses anymore, right? But I mean, that's part of the process of deindustrialization and making this massive immiserated class not producing anything, causing this mass slumification, wasteland, just Les Miserablification of the society. And you have a tiny dwindling shrinking minority of multi-house owning, very wealthy, super wealthy billionaire class, and then smaller and smaller minority of millionaires who have multiple houses, most of them older, Gen X boomer age, that are supporting. If you're lucky, you get to be one of the 10 or 20% millennial or Gen Z, Gen Alpha, who have sugar mommy, sugar daddy, which is your mommy and your daddy, your bank of mommy and daddy, your trust fund. They pay your rent if you want to go to LA and pretend to be a photographer or an actor or get into anime voice acting or right. But that's based upon your parents' wealth. Not there's no amount of money you can make in most jobs that Gen Z can, if they get a job and it's not replaced by AI, that will afford them a life, right? The average job doesn't even pay enough you have to take almost all your salary for most jobs you can get as a Gen Z or Gen Alpha person, certainly entry level jobs, to even just afford rent, if you could afford rent at all. Some people can't. Some people you have to take 100% to try to afford some rent, because jobs are paying less than minimum wage a lot of the times nowadays. They're all like perma temp, perma intern, gray area jobs that people are getting, and if they have a job, as I said. So anyway, so long story short, so the U.S. wanted to reindustrialize. And the main takeaway from this is Neofeud's on sale, so don't forget to go buy it. Overturn the plutocracy of wealthy elites. So you got to get rid of that, right? If you're doing deindustrialization, private equity, so in Silicon Valley, there's a buzzword that goes around, and shitification, but that is a common this kind of thing has happened to rich European countries, like even earlier, countries that became Japan has had this happen to it, but it's really about making money after economy has grown, making money, basically short selling or making money cannibalizing the existing economy. So it's making money as the country shrinks down, it's not the same. It's not a mirror process, but it's like as you immiserate people and you squeeze more and more rentier class. It's another word they often comes up with this. Britain definitely has. It's just a rentier society for sure. And so if you want to but that's not conducive to industrialization, right? The more the U.S. economy shrinks in this sense, the more the current private equity, the BlackRocks, right, and the more the investor class, these hyper financialized class, make. They don't have an incentive. And see, there's a paradox where there's no. Yes, it would be good for the if the parasite stopped eating 90% of the host's hamburgers and bread and chicken nuggets that it needs for energy, right? If the tapeworm of Wall Street didn't consume as much of America's energy and wealth as it did, maybe it could extend the life of the United States, and it would be good for the whole body of the United States, right? But internally there isn't a way to get from the financialized state to the from a shrinking financialized private equity state or neo-feudal self-cannibalizing capitalism into a economically growing, real economy growing, industrialized state, right? I mean, it could happen, but it's going to take a big change. And one of the things that arguably, I say with this almost certainly has to happen, is that the United States would have to have overturn of the plutocracy of the wealthy elites that control the government, because the government the government could make decisions to say, we're going to massively invest. This is how China did it, just as one example. And many other countries have done it as well. Russia has also done this, right? Which is, and that's one of the things that people won't want to give Vladimir Putin any credit for, but that's part of what he did, whether you like him or not, is that he did stop. He came to oligarchs and said, you're going to stop trying to squeeze as much money as you can out of people, and you're going to sign this thing, and I'm going to take your multi-billion-dollar oil and gas company, and we're going to take that, we're going to use the revenue to invest in our economy, in infrastructure, and we're going to invest in economy that benefits more of our population. And also we need to invest in some of this into military, because now we have to fight this war. But that was government directed, right? If because after the fall of the Soviet Union, Russia was shrinking because it had installed into it, with the help of the United States, right, that got what it wanted, the collapse of the Soviet Union and its the Communist Party, and the Balkan, or not balkanization, but the immiseration of Russia. And then it said, we're gonna put people in charge of your minerals, in charge of your gas, in charge of your energy, and we're gonna have these, and they're gonna invest into Western financial capitals like London, like the United States, and we're gonna try to insert as much and control as much as we can. And that was causing misery. There were millions of people suffered it, poverty increased, and people died. And it was actually the government reasserting control, or more control, and it wasn't necessarily a communist party, but it was it was a shift in the control from the completely for their own personal plutocratic benefit, what they would call Russian oligarchs too. At least it was, I forget the exact name of the party. There is actually a communist party in Russia as well, but it's but the government basically started taking more control away from private interests and redirecting that, at least partially to help the society. Yeah, obviously to help themselves as well. But Russia is growing faster than the EU, just as an example. Russia has their rail, their housing situation, the food situation. I mean, it's doing better. Even with the war, they were doing better, in part because the war actually helped them to industrialize even further. In part. That's another thing that can, if you have a war, this can change the course of industrialization as well. But anyway, when it comes to the United States, you have this huge, just the level of corruption. It's just the biggest capitalist superpower. It's an imperial. It's the history of it. What the U.S. is. It's the world. It has what I say. It was the world hyperpower, unipolar, imperial capitalist hegemon. It was an empire. It still is. It's losing its power, but it's still that, right? And the world's money flows in. So to deal with that, it would need you would have to completely get rid of that plutocracy and the government by the wealthy elites that have no interest in making anything in the United States. They would not profit. They would lose money if they were to invest in infrastructure. They invest into making goods. They could make, you can make $1 billion right now selling a Dogecoin, gutting infrastructure, gutting Applebee's, charging more for Apple or streaming services. Why am I going to invest money that will take years, if ever I get a return, to build roads, to build car plants? I can make $1 billion now when I might make $500 million years from now building the real economy. I don't care about the real economy. I don't care about anything except my line go up, right? So that's who runs the United States. It's the wealthy elite. So that they're not going to allow the United States to reindustrialize in any significant sense. They'll pay lip service. They're politicians that they own, because every U.S. politician is, again, as I frequently point out, they're 99% owned by, their decisions are determined by what has the most wealthy money going towards that through lobbying, right? Now Trump is a little bit of a wild card because he's very, he's very gangster-ish. He's very like he's like the modern American Marcus Aurelius or Nero at the end of the collapse of the U.S. Empire. But he himself is a billionaire. He is doing what he wants to do, and he does have billionaire friends like Elon and Peter Thiel around him, right? And he's chaotic, but he's not going to do anything that actually, he's not going to intentionally do anything. Like, he's not going to confiscate the wealth of the billionaires and reallocate all the billionaires' wealth of America to building roads, infrastructure, giving Medicare for all, right? Giving people housing, healthcare, and food guarantees. Donald Trump is not going to do that. No American party of any size is going to ever do that, in the foreseeable circumstance, without complete let's just say the changing of the entire system of the United States. It's not going to it has to come from the people. It's not going to come from these elites. Anyways, so they rake in more dollars of private equity selling hype, being a tapeworm and an anemic economy to making things. Get number two. So that's number one. So I've been going off for a little bit longer than I meant to, but I'm talking about U.S. reindustrialization and not without total system change. So number one, what you would need to have is overturn of the plutocracy of wealthy elites. Number two, give industrial laborers a good deal. In China, workers at factories get free housing, free quality meals, and save an equivalent of $3,500 per month making phones and clothes, among other things. If the U.S. upended its capitalist, slave-loving oligarchy, it could eventually do this. Now, many people might be like, Silver Spook, where do you even get that? I forget exactly where I had a link to that, but I got to go look it up. But you can go on Xiaohongshu. Now here's an ad for Xiaohongshu. Go to a Communist Party, non-capitalist, non-empire moderated platform where you can say words without being reined in by the Orwellian thought police, right? Where you can't say Palestine, and you can't talk about stopping Israel, and you can't really say anything. And if you're African stream, you get banned for being Russian, so-called Russian propaganda. So go on to Red Note where you can learn things and speak freely. You can follow me at Silver Spook there. But I was actually offered a job on this Chinese-owned social media, Xiaohongshu, and it is regulated by the Communist Party of China, with a cadre inside their tech company headquarters. Anyways, so I was actually offered a job by someone. I said I'm having a really hard time in Hawaii because I have an anemic income, and Hawaii is a U.S. colony, illegal forced colony, and we have to unfortunately live under the U.S. capitalist collapsing plutocratic system. And I said, like, I work full time and I was still homeless with my family, living in a tent or living in a car on the street. And the Chinese said, that's terrible. If you come to China, you can work at Foxconn, right? This is, and I looked it up and it's true. You can get a job making phones, it's a dormitory system. It's actually, it's a mandated by law by the Chinese government. If you are working in a factory as an industrial laborer, okay, so you could be like, whether you're like, working on chips, you could be, putting together shoes, various kinds. There's a more advanced automation and high-tech engineering now. But, you could be working on semiconductors, you could be working on iPhones, quantum computing components, you could be working on anything. All right, everything America has is made in China, which is so much of it. Components, parts of phones, car parts, clothes, whatever you're doing. If you work in industrial, a lot of these are in the cities, Shenzhen, Shanghai. Actually, the second and third tier cities have even more of this now. Shenzhen was a place where a lot of this happened, but a lot of that's moved on to other cities because of China's growth, right? And anyway, so you have to have free housing, and you have to give your workers free food. And it's not just any kind of food. It's not slop. You don't get AI slop, and you don't get AI slop, and you don't get food slop. You have to actually get like vegetables and meat and a whole variety of spices, the whole food pyramid. Most Americans can't afford that, right? It's like $12 for 12 eggs right now, I think. It's like $30,000 for an iPhone. It's the food prices have been off the charts for a long time as America starves its own people for capitalist profit seeking and immiseration of the Neofeudal collapse phase. In China, you have to give free food. You have to guarantee that the people in your factory will have food. You have to guarantee free housing. Now, it's not perfect housing, but you're there to work. You're not there to, have two kids in a bouncy castle. It's a temporary job. So, but it's like going in a merchant marine, like working on a ship. If you're like a merchant marine, or you join the military, or if you go and work in an oil field, or you go working, as an Alaskan crab fisherman, you don't expect the perfect living conditions while you're Alaskan crab fishing. It's also a little bit dangerous. It's not the most healthy thing to do, but somebody has to do those jobs, right? Electricians. That I was thinking about, like, people saying, "Oh, nobody wants to do these jobs." If you're an electrician, if you're you're up on electrical wires, you could die, even if you're trimming trees. You do say you have safety equipment. You have safety equipment. I've done it before, right? You try to do it as I probably should have done it a little bit safer, but A tree branch could break, the wind could blow, it could be bad conditions, and you could die. You could get hurt. Right? So there are jobs that are just dangerous. Somebody has to do those jobs. Like plumbing is not the construction work. You might work on a house that has asbestos, right? Because people say, well, Americans won't do industrial jobs. Nobody wants to work in a factory. Nobody will. I'm going to come to that. I'm a little bit jumping ahead, but long story short, the Chinese work, if you work for 2 to 3 years in a Chinese phone factory or production facility, you will have saved $3,500 per month because you don't pay for anything. You don't pay for your food. You don't pay for your housing. And the medical care is 10 to 100 times cheaper than America. It's basically almost free. So if you got to go and get like a cast because you broke something, it's like less than $100. If you got to see the doctor, it's like $1, right? If you need like ultrasound, it's like $15. Okay, so the healthcare is basically negligible. People go to the doctor to find love and like get dates and make friends. Okay, it's like part of Chinese TV shows. That's Americans be like, I'm never going to go to the doctor unless I'm like 5 seconds from death, and my heart is about to explode. Right. So long story short, if you told young Americans, let's say you're 18 years old. I mean, this is usually who does these jobs, right? When you're 18 years old, people climb Mount Everest, right? People like go big wave surfing and endanger themselves anyway, right? If an industrial job is a little bit dangerous, I mean, people turn 18 and they go work in McDonald's. I mean, that's a grueling job. I mean, it could be dangerous too. You get burnt with fry oil. You have dangerous customers. It's full of meth addicts and people on fentanyl that America narco traffics into its own people because they can't narco traffic it into China anymore. So you got this. It's not like some service jobs are not the best jobs. Ask people who have to work at Burger King. Ask people to work at McDonald's. Ask the line cooks, right? So they say, oh, well, Americans won't do this. Americans are already doing not great jobs, right? But the thing is, in China, even if you're doing one of these not the best jobs, you actually have a way better deal. Even if you work at a McDonald's in China, you're living better than an American. If you work at there are McDonald's in China. Number one, there's still a lot of KFC in China. If you work at a KFC in China, you probably look at a Luckin Coffee or like the world's biggest fast food restaurants. China's already overtaken the United States. McDonald's was supplanted by this Chinese dairy fast food place. If you work at them, you have a house, you have rent, you have a house, you have food, you have cheap healthcare. You're not worried about basic needs. You're not as rich as if you were if you're an AI programmer for Unitree. Or you're an engineer at Huawei, you're making more than that. But, so long story short, when you work at one of these factories, people often will choose to work 12 hours. It's often described as the Chinese making Apple phones are so oppressed because they have to work 12 hours. You actually don't have to, right? But if you work 12 hours, because your goal is not to work at the iPhone assembly factory forever. Your goal is to make enough money so that you can get a down payment for a business, right? After 2 years of working at a Chinese manufacturing facility, you with all your needs taken care of, you have enough money to buy a modest house in like a town or in some of the lower tier cities. You couldn't buy a brand new apartment in Shanghai, but you have enough money to start a new business. You have the equivalent of like $100,000, right? Or it's like it'd be the U.S. equivalent of about, after 2 years, about $100,000, right? And in China, everything is cheaper, so you could buy a house, you could start a business. So you're working for some years, and they call them, it's migrant workers. And when people say the Chinese have migrant workers, Americans think of, these are like those oppressed Mexicans and South Central Americans and Filipinos that they live under the table and they're living on horrible conditions, being paid $3 an hour, and they get beaten and there's no recourse because they're illegal, quote unquote, illegal immigrants. The Chinese are migrating from their home area where they have guaranteed housing with the whole coal system, where basically they have a home province where they're from because they're indigenous to China. Nobody's indigenous to the U.S. that calls himself an American and acts in that way because the U.S. is a settler colony based upon slavery and genocide. So The migrant workers, they're people that have houses, they have towns they're from, and they come to the cities to make more money. But they always have an option to go back. See, that's Americans don't have the option. A poor American worker in LA, many of them they don't have an option to go anywhere. They have the option to go to prison. See, in China, you have the option to go home and live the bucolic life in the countryside. I mean, it's not, it's not perfect, but like you can live in your hometown and have free super cheap healthcare, housing, and education in your hometown. Right? In the U.S., you can go to prison, or you can live on the street, or you can like break your butt and barely make it. See, the American dream is dead. It's never been alive ever, really, except for cis white straight guys in the 50s. But it's definitely dead now. So the Chinese dream is alive and well. And the dream is I could leave my province, go to Shanghai, go to a second tier city, go to Nanjing. I work in one of these. Ideally, maybe you could get a job working in an office, you work for Huawei, maybe become an astronaut for the Chinese space station. Maybe you invent the next DeepSeek, right? But if that doesn't work, you could try to get a job in these. You can make phones. You can make Huawei phones. And after 2 or 3 years, you have enough money saved to start a new life. You don't got to work there forever. That's why the Chinese say, like, oh, well, you're not going to work you're not going to work, you're not going to sew clothes, and you're not going to make shoes forever. You just work there to make enough money, saving money. Right? The average American office worker with a 4-year degree would get on a plane immediately, go to China. The average Gen Z American would get on a plane, go to China, and just jump at the opportunity to make iPhones in a factory. You see what I'm saying? If they actually knew what the deal was. That's why the U.S. has to lie all the time. If you had that, this is how China industrializes. China gives actually a pretty good deal to many of the workers, and then the U.S. does a lot of the the Chinese treatment of the workers is so bad. It's propaganda. So the United States looks like it's moral and looks like it's successful. It's not. It's not. It's terrible. The conditions are worse in the 80s and such, but China was worse in the 80s because China was the 5th poorest country on the planet because of imperialism, capitalism, and colonialism during Mao Zedong's revolution. In case you don't know that. And they have the world's greatest success story. Anyways, I know I talk about that a lot, so let me skip that. Long story short, if young Americans said, imagine if you're American and you worked, imagine if you're American and you went and you worked and you made Nike shoes in California, and after 2 years you could buy a house with the money you saved. Imagine when you worked at McDonald's, you never paid rent. You didn't pay any rent. Imagine if when you were making, imagine being like, just doing basic, when you're assembling phones in New York, right? Or somewhere in South Carolina. After 2 years, you didn't pay rent, you didn't pay for food, and you basically had near free healthcare. After 2 years of assembling phones, you could start your brand new business. You had $100,000 just in the bank. How many young Americans would take that deal? How many young Europeans would take that deal? How many young Japanese would take that deal? They all have this severe mental illness in the animation industry because they're all losing their jobs. Because the Japanese are neo-feudal, cannibalizing their own anime industry. How many Japanese, Americans, Canadians, Australians, Europeans would take the deal? Young ones, not the old, wealthy ones that are swimming in generational stolen colonial wealth, but the young ones, right, who are flailing, millennials who are still in debt, right? The Chinese are like, why are people in debt? In China, everyone's in wealth. 90% of people own their house. Part of the way you get a house is by you working in the factory. That's why the Chinese choose to leave the house they already own and is guaranteed so they can come to a factory and make even more money so they can start a new business or get a nicer house. Right? But Americans like, oh my God, the poor Chinese, they're all peasants. Like J.D. Vance, the Chinese are all a bunch of peasants. They're just, the Chinese impoverished peasants we're borrowing money for them so we can buy their stuff. It's just nonsense, right? These people, it's like, how does it make any sense? So it's the poor, super poor peasants. Where are they getting all this money to give you to buy the phones that the peasants? Is it a peasant or is it the world's most advanced manufacturing economy? right? But the U.S. the West is I don't know. It never had a brain. It had accidentally ping pong. It had accidental like pinball neurons that sometimes make sentences that half make sense, but usually never. And it basically runs on militarism, lying, and slaves, like everybody who works in the prisons of the United States, plus all the slaves they made in Libya and all the bombings they do of people around the world. So, long story short, so number one, you have to get rid of your plutocracy that have no incentive of industrializing. They want to make money deindustrializing. You got to get rid of that. And that's going to take something that starts with the letter R. And it's the thing that you do after you dance and dance. Number two, you have to give industrial laborers a good deal. So people have an incentive to go out and do this labor. Now, it doesn't have to be that good, but you need to have minimum. You need to have like high paying jobs to do industrial work. The U.S. has industry, but the U.S. does industry in prisons with slave labor and under the table illegal immigrants. They should just be people, but they're treated. You can hyper abuse them and have them pick your tomatoes. You can have them work if you have a factory. You work them in a sweatshop. You can have the slave laborers in prison, predominantly black and brown. The racism is part of this. Have them do all of this work, sewing your Victoria's Secret garments, putting together, putting stamps on a tractor that says "Made in America." Have black people put out your wildfires, and there is some industrial work that's done in America, done by slaves in prison. America never abolished slavery; it moved the slavery to prisons, and then unjustly incarcerated for nonviolent drug offenses for disproportionately black and brown and poor people to do all of its industrial labor. So nobody wants. The Chinese deal is buy a second nicer house by working with free housing and free meals for 2 years. The American system is go to prison and be beaten, harassed, and live as a slave and make phones. That's not a good deal. Nobody wants to go to prison to make phones. But that's how America does industrialization, if it has any. Doesn't really. Prison. This is the other thing. Prison labor is not good. Slave labor is not good. Illegal immigrant labor, oppressed people that are running away from ICE. That are in terror. That's not conducive to people working hard. I mean, the West thinks that, if we just beat the crap out of people, that's not actually the best way to incentivize people. It's also immoral and terrible and abhorrent, and it shouldn't exist. But it's also not that efficient. This is why China is also beating the United States and the West, right? They don't and it's just more. It's more moral also. Because people who are motivated because they are looking forward to a better life, they're going to put their best work in, right? They're going to put their best work in. And the Chinese know that when they work at the Huawei phone manufacturing, it's bettering their country. Their whole country is going to get stronger. They're going to have better products. They take pride in their products. The Chinese take pride in their products. How much does a black slave sewing Victoria's Secret garments take pride in Victoria's Secret? They hate that. American workers hate their country. They hate their boss. They hate their company. They hate their capitalist system that runs their work. That's not conducive to the best work. You know what I mean? You're going to try to maliciously comply every step of the way. And why wouldn't you? Your bosses, the owners are terrible, right? And that's going to make your products worse. You have to deal with discipline. You have to deal with theft. You're going to have to deal with the workers, stopping the work, right? A union having a strike, that's necessary when you have an exploitative capitalist system, right? That's not conducive to producing more products. All the lines slow down. When people get fired and they come back, there's people that you have entire teams of the of the office managers that have to just deal with all the firing for the capitalist system. Everyone is quiet. The quiet quitting is part of increased bad deals of the workers. So that alone is enough to cause worse products. How are you going to compete with China? How are you going to compete with China when everyone is living their best life? Everyone is incentivized to do their best because it benefits their whole society, the greatness of their country that they love, and it's deserved love. America doesn't deserve to be loved. It's a genocidal, imperialist, fascist hellhole, just like all colonizer countries, right? So another problem is your countries are immoral and not worthy of love. The United States never was great. right? So anyone who loves America is like fundamentally it's like white supremacist, fascist, denialist people. Your MAGA people who love America, look at them. You know, you can see them. Take a look out the window. They're not the smartest people, and they're not the most moral. It's some combination of the two. People who love China, they're like actually it's that's a really hard problem to solve. That's also why you need complete system change. You can't be going around the world doing GENOCIDE. You can't be going around the world plundering. You can't be beating people up in your own country. You can't have people looking the other way, working for the most horrible capitalist and racist and imperialist and fascist people. You can't have a Democratic and Republican Party that are completely complicit, corrupt. Nobody can love that. Nobody wants to work for America. Nobody really wants to make America great again, except for psychopathic, sick people in the mind. Nobody wants to make Europe great again either, really, because they're all still colonial powers that are vassals of the United States. So that's a whole problem. You're not going to get a generation of young people that want to put work in to make America great, right? Except the people that only say that, but what they want to do is take advantage of other people. That's not conducive to a strong workforce. So you got there's massive problems to this. These are all like hugely intersecting problems of why U.S. is not going to reindustrialize. Even if it wanted to, it's not going to reindustrialize. Anyway, let's keep going. Hey, what's up, McLovin? And comedian WW. Okay, number three. Okay, so number three, root out classist, racist culture. This I kind of talked about this a little bit. Lies and stigmas about unskilled immigrant agriculture and assembly workers that benefit privileged strata of white collar society and also white palm color society keep the bullshit office job, aka non-essential labor aristocracy lording it up, hurting productive jobs. So this is all like. I kind of spoke to this a little bit, but so it's not just because you have billionaires and millionaires and the wealthy and corporations running the society parasitically, right? Tapewormifying it to death and destroying the built-up U.S. economy and making money as it goes down, right? This is the thing that the lie is that line go up is the only way to make money. You can make money when line go down. It's called short selling. That's what the 2009 financial crisis was based upon. Goldman Sachs betting that the value of its own assets was going to go down, and then some of them at the top made money. Their own banks and their own mortgages, they had the value went down, but they made money as it collapsed, right? So so that's another false thing. But anyway, so but not only do you have that upper class that's parasitically making the lower classes anemic, you also have classist culture that is even amongst all classes, that people that do wealth worship. You have capitalist even poor, like people that are not that rich, but they look down, they go, oh, I'm not one of those ghetto people, I'm not one of those poor immigrants, those uncouth, unclassed, lower people. Those in Hawaii they call them like locals, right? I'm not one of those welfare queen. I'm so there's all this wealth worship, prosperity doctrine. I'm just a temporarily embarrassed millionaire. People of all classes in the U.S. have been propagandized and believe that kind of stuff, and they act and they are of that culture. And there's also the racist that intersects with that, right? Those, like, that's when people say those aren't jobs Americans will do, right? Or I saw even a black person recently tweeted, y'all, we're done picking cotton. That's why we need illegal immigrants to do we need them immigrants doing all this cotton work, because I ain't picking no more cotton. It's like, and then somebody tweeted like Kwame Ture it was like one of the Black Panthers that said like, we need revolutionary education or we're gonna have black imperialists in the future, right? And it's like, so you can be of any race too, and you can even like have these like racist attitudes. They'll be like, those jobs are for brown people, those jobs are for black or brown people, maybe not black people. Now we moved up in the world, and now we can have the brown people do these jobs, or we can have these immigrants do these jobs, or we're gonna have Indians do these jobs. We'll have the Asians do these jobs. we'll have someone in the global south under imperialism do these jobs. That attitude, right? It's imperialist, it's classist, it's racist. It's basically, I am deserving of exploitation of other people for some reason, and I'm better than them for some, made up reason, basically. Like that. So all of that attitude of like, there's people that work the unskilled jobs. There's people that work undesirable jobs, factory jobs, industrial jobs, mining jobs, right? Resource extraction. Kids in the Congo can work that mine. I'm an American. I don't do that. People, if mining has to be done, it should be done as safe as possible, and everyone should be properly compensated. Chinese have super advanced mining technology, so you can actually suck 20 times more iron or cadmium or antimony out of the soil or the earth. It's like way less environmentally destructive, and it's also AI and robot automated, right? So ideally, you could just, at this point, you could definitely have more of that. But people still have this attitude, well, we're not bringing any industrial physical labor, not to where I am, not in my country, and definitely I'm not going to do it. If somebody's going to do it, it's going to be migrants, it's going to be somebody poorer than me, it's going to be somebody different color than me. That's Western culture. That's another deep sick. That's not just in the rich. That's pervasive, right? That's part of how you can keep capitalism going, is by what they do call division of labor, right? How do you divide labor, right? That's also what Neofeud's about. It's dividing people into those in the highest, and then the mid tier, and the lower and lower tier of society. But the bottom is like the robots and the chimeras that are kind of stand-ins for the lowest of the ghettoized and the illegal immigrant. And then there's like, low level workers that are above them, and then above them you have the managers, and above the managers you have the lords, and then there's the lord executives, and then there's the lord VP marketing, and then the dukes and duchesses of the mayors and the mayors and the lower level executives. And at the very top you have the people that run the CIA and the global empire, and they're the king emperors, the king/CEO/CIA directors in Neofeud. But that's a division of classist labor, right? And the lower you are, the more essential and the more valuable your labor is. And the higher you are, the more needless and superfluous, the more BS, right? The more fraudulent your job is, the more your job at the highest level. The bankers at the very top, they're all parasitic. They produce nothing. They suck from everyone else. They destroy real economy. They're why the U.S. doesn't have a real economy to a large extent. And the people at the bottom, the people that mine, without mining, you don't have anything else. Where are you going to get the metal to put in any phone to tweet about how much your stonk made by being the head of JP Morgan? So, and people throughout the society aspire to the highest level in a capitalist Western societies like the United States has. So anyway, so Lies and Stigmas about unskilled immigrant agriculture and assembly workers that benefit privileged strata of white collar society. Do the BS jobs, right? And they consume the iPhones, they consume the Prada, they consume fancy stuff made in China, they consume. Well, they can't consume BYD cars because those are the best in the world, but you can't even get them. But they consume whatever they can get, like Apple. They'll overbuy tons and tons of clothes. They'll buy as much, products they can get from Target as they can, with their exorbitant salaries they get as part of the labor aristocracy, right? Which is another way you think of neo-feudalism, is this the top 50%. Middle upper classes of the Western countries are the new feudal lord and lady classes, and then the global majority, the 8 billion people around the world, those are the new serf class. Is another way to think about neo-feudalism, and so as long as you have that, right, that if you're doing agriculture, if you're doing assembly workers, that is unskilled. That's not stuff that I do. You're not going to reindustrialize. You look at during the COVID pandemic, right? In 2020, during the pandemic, what happened? Everyone who was working a white collar, middle upper class job right? The people working in offices, the sending the TPS reports, all the finance, insurance, real estate, all those and jobs like that. Their jobs were non-essential. What was essential? Who had to go to work, right? All those jobs that are the unskilled immigrant, delivery jobs, the cooking jobs, the harvesting the tomatoes, doing all that. That's what actually is the most important jobs in society. That's the essential work in a society, and you could see it happening. But those people are obviously disproportionately people of color, disproportionately migrant, disproportionately or not citizens. All that. The reason why you want a not citizen is you can threaten them with deportation a lot easier, right? The U.S. is now trying to deport full U.S. citizens. It's kind of self-defeating. Like, how are you gonna, right? The U.S. is just trying to figure out how can we get more of our people to get paid less to do work, and it's trying to like basically immigrantify like bigger swaths. So if you say free Palestine, or if you try to do anything useful and good in the world, you get turned into honorary immigrant. It seems like what the U.S. is trying to do. But even still, they had to say, well, immigrants who do agricultural, industrial, farming, or service work, they're going to be free from the deportation. It's like, that's all your people. It's another self-owned, just like the tariffs. Anyways, so you have to get rid of that culture so that people, again, that ties back into number 2. Give laborers a good deal, right? If you have people, so and if people, the people have to value industrial work. They should, because it's just immoral. It's just wrong. People should value care work. People should value agricultural work. People should value, and it should be prestigious to be anything: a janitor, agricultural worker, a manufacturing worker, because those jobs are needed. Those jobs are essential. We just saw them essential. Those jobs are more. A manufacturer or a janitor is more essential than any banker, than any of the biggest people who are professional speech givers in the nonprofit, even a lot of the academic world. I mean, we do need learning and knowledge and science, but a lot of this stuff, certainly USAID, and certainly a lot of what they call political science in the United States and economics is like science fiction, is both BS learning, like BS office jobs. Those jobs are not essential, right? And so, but the attitude of the West has to, the capitalist, imperialist, racist West has to propagandize its own people that these people are better. These people who do these jobs are better than those people, because that's what causes the inequity in the pay in society to perpetuate the neo-feudal labor aristocracy, the white collar, upper class versus the lowly blue collar, and even worse, the lowly colonies in Africa collar. The black collar, because they're swimming in the mud in the Congo, finding your cobalt, right? Getting killed, being child slaves in the Congo under the U.S. empire with this little West Asian settler colony. Also France and all of Europe, still colonizing Africa and the rest of the world. Anyway, so you got to root that out, or you're never going to get reindustrialization. Rebuild intergenerational trust. This is also important. Like it also dovetails with what I said before. People hate their jobs. People in the capitalist world, people in the U.S. and the West hate their jobs. It's some of them that are way more well off, they're okay with them, but most people hate their boss. If you work in capitalism, your boss is exploiting you. Your CEO, the corporation, is exploiting you. That's why cyberpunk exists. Cyberpunk is just like putting neon on the human experience of working as a soul-sucking office employee, adjusting people's insurance and denying them health care for Brian Thompson. It's a horrible. That's what, nobody wants to work for that. Nobody's going to like give their like all for that. Nobody's going to give their all for McDonald's. You know what I mean? Nobody like, oh my God, except for really weird people. Like, there's this movie I like called Buzzard. It's about this one guy at a job. It's like this indie punk rock film called not that, that's a bird. It's about the main character is he's like this kid in like Michigan, the city somewhere, and he's like got to work at his bank, but the bank is like ripping people off, as all banks are, and he's being paid like $7.25 or $11. It's not. It's like very low wage to basically move papers around and put stamps, and he doesn't even know what the hell he's doing there, right? But his friend is like, "This is the best job ever, man. I love this job." But the friend is like the only weirdo who's like celebrating working at like a soul sucking giant bank, giant corporation, rat race job with no cheese at the end. And but nobody wants to give their all. Like I said, right? China is gonna blow past you because Chinese can go, this where we work here is gonna benefit our country. Our country is gonna get stronger. All our people are gonna get wealthier under socialism with Chinese characteristics, under our Communist Party. I'm gonna work as hard as I can. My children will be better off. Just my parents worked under Mao to build revolution, to throw off colonialism, imperialism, and the shackles of capitalism. We got rid of the landlord class. We subjugated the capital under the People's Communist Party and the People's Republic of China. My parents worked. They had hard times. They worked agriculturally. And then now my life in the 80s as a Gen X Chinese is better. The Gen Z look at their parents. They go, my parents worked so hard in those factories to make Walmart products. And now I'm living 4 times higher wages than 40 years ago. So I'm going to work hard to make sure that in the future we get even better. You know what I'm saying? So people like, there is a whole civilization. There is a society. There are real values. There is a real civilization. There's a real history of like a country that is rising, and you're part of a great project of building socialism. You're building your people and your country back up, right? In the U.S. and the West, what am I going to go to work for? I'm going to go to work for making Lockheed Martin executives richer. What am I going to go to work for? So I can be more broke, so I can pay 6 times more. People don't want to go to work just because I hate work, because it's run by the most horrible people in the world. Everything I do, I can't even work at university without being pro GENOCIDE. Who wants to work for that? Who wants to work for that? Nobody wants to. No young person. Certainly not. Once they figure out the game, they're like, even people who work for Human Rights Watch, they realize all the articles I wrote about the human rights violations in Syria, that was just to overthrow the country and make more human rights violations. Nobody wants to, but the West needs a constant young suckers coming in around the world and from their own children, lying to their own children, like America and the West is great or anything free, moral, or human rights or democratic, right? And it means people coming in, and once they figure out the game, then they got kicked out. That's why nobody can date. The upper classes of the West don't date above 25 because the women all figure out this patriarchy is this misogynistic hellhole. And I'm not going to date any more men. But that's like all of the economy is like that. Like, I'm not going to, past 25, I ain't going to work unless I absolutely have to. Once I figure out how screwed up this system is, I'm not working harder than I have to. That is not going to get you industrialization. And so also there's intergenerational trust. There's an intergenerational trust factor. While the white man, boomers got a house, Thunderbird, and cheap meds working one job. Millennials plus work 2 jobs to rent a moldy closet from landlord Steve, boomer Steve, walking to work, never going to hospital. Everyone is tired and they hate work as a whole. So I talked about this before on this channel. People that are my age, I'm at 42, people my age and younger, right, have been completely screwed. Like the average millennial, still doesn't own a house. If they do own one, it's not the one that will house the average family. We just live worse than our parents. The boomer generation could work one job, no college degree, own a house, and they have everything they needed, and have all their needs taken care of. We simply don't, right? Gen Alpha is even way more. Gen Z and Alpha just get more and more screwed as part of this process of self cannibalization by the neo-feudal plutocratic class, and there is still a 10 to 20% of the population that have the boomer parents that have multiple houses. They have 401ks. They still have some amount of. They have some stocks. Some of these, right? Majority white. These are the liberals that go into brunch. I mean, some of them were out for the 50-51 protest. Not everyone was like that, but many of them were. Older, whiter crowd, right? that still have some wealth. These are the ones that are they're worried about their stonks, because they still have some stonks. They have stocks in the stock market. They have some amount of mutual funds left. They have multiple houses. They're renting their house. They're renting one of their houses out to like 10 millennials and Gen Zers, right? They just keep the booming business in America was doors. Why was one of the number one manufacturing products in America doors? Gold doors, fancy doors, cheaper doors, all kind of doors. Because America wasn't building houses. It was splitting one house into 10 sub units to rent out 10 mini tiny little micro undignified amounts of space to 10 separate millennials. What one boomer, 10 millennial and Gen Zers with 4 or 8 year college degrees renting out a tiny slot in a house, what one boomer with no college degree, just a high school diploma, could buy for his whole family. That's why doors are booming. That's why drywall. You can do drywall, you can make doors, right? But we're not making anything new. We're going to leave the house moldy. We're going to leave it full of mushrooms. We're going to leave it falling apart. We're not going to fix the lead in the pipes. We're just going to subdivide our molding, rotting infrastructure and houses and sell it for higher and higher prices to our children. And that's why nobody likes landlords and nobody likes their parents. And they're all gray rocking, and they're all, low contact and zero contact, cutting off the parents' generation, because there isn't intergenerational trust. Because large swaths, not every single boomer or Gen Xer, but large swaths of the richer, older generations that are still in that wealth, and they tend to have these annoying man and women children, brats, right? Spoiled. The liberals have these spoiled liberal brats. The other ones have, there's the man baby 42-year-old right-wing podcaster trying to sell alpha testosterone pills and get more stonks with Dogecoins, right? Living in boomer mama and daddy's basement, the 5th basement, because mommy and daddy have 5 houses. And then there's the liberal one that's like making YouTube video essays about how leftism is when everybody has when there's a queer character in every imperial genocide movie. I'm sorry, Marvel movie. And I mean, I'm a queer, indigenous person, but that's not a solution. And living in mommy and daddy's house, living off of mommy and daddy's millions of dollars while you get to do whatever you want to do, that's great for you, and your YouTube video essays, or you make like giant life-size models of 1920s locomotives out of Lego, and then you make a YouTube video or you make an Instagram about that, and nobody watches it. That's great that you have the familial generational wealth from colonialism that your parents had to invest into stonks as boomers or wherever you got that wealth to spend all that money on Chinese produced plastic and live your life that you want to live. That's nice, but that's not most of the younger generations. That's not most of Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Most of them don't trust that older generation. Most of them have to put up with these landlords, and that all those landlords and those mass wealth accumulators that take their brat children on multiple Disneyland trips a year, and they're 42 years old and they still don't even know how to make their own food or make their own freaking bed. And then there's the rest of the working class Gen Z and Gen Alpha, I gotta work 3 jobs, but I'm gonna do as little work at my 3 freaking jobs as I possibly can, because I hate all these jobs. That's not gonna reindustrialize. You know what I mean? That's just the sheer animosity, the sheer legitimate, justified animosity that the people 40 years and under who are not a minority of trustafarian, wealthy millennial Gen Z and Gen Alpha, just the rage alone is going to kneecap and destroy any attempt to reindustrialize. You have to, this is like so many catch-22s, right? It's why, again, it will take complete total system change. Because you always see these articles, economists that say, oh, these Gen Z, they don't want to work hard. They're quiet quitting. No, but everyone's so lazy. They're just tired. Why the tired generation? We're fucking tired. I'm sorry, we're tired. We're disabled. We're gonna get to the pandemic. That's a whole other one. We're disabled. We're tired. We're working and breaking our ass while you and your spoiled little brat, the still rich boomer Steve, you had little, you had little millennial Tina and millennial Bob, millennial fucking white dreadlocks son, who's still like having 3 non-jobs, and we have to work around that guy while you keep on pushing him through, even though he's screwing up the work that we're trying to do, and yeah, we're tired. Of course we're fucking tired. Yeah, we're not going to work hard. Nobody wants to work for you. You screwed us over. We hate you. We're not going to work for you. We're not going to industrial work for you. We're barely going to office work for you. That's why I quit all government and corporate jobs I used to work for, because I hated those people. I was being paid more money than I currently make working at a nonprofit. I was working at a corporate job, worked at a government job, worked at a nonprofit job. I quit that job because I hated that nonprofit, because of how horrible the bosses and the whole structure of that was exploiting the women and queer people and poor and brown and immigrants, and the white and comprador Oreo-fied, coconut-fied, Twinkie-fied sellouts at the top were raking in millions of dollars in a nonprofit, while everyone doing the work like me, teaching and doing the actual essential labor, we're getting completely screwed over. So I said, like, I'm not going to work for that organization anymore. And I did kneecap. I blew their grant up the next year. I said, at the very last minute, I quit like right as they needed me to go and justify the next year of grant. Most 95% of the grants went straight to buying politicians. It's like USAID money. Nobody wants to work for a USAID when they figure out what it is. Nobody wants to work for we're going to bring hope and change to children in Africa by testing out drugs that are going to be overpriced, that Bill Gates is going to. Nobody wants to work for you. Everybody hates you because you are justifiably hateable. The U.S. is justifiably hateable. Its ruling class, it's liberal and conservative. All its power classes that are in power are justifiably horrible. Nobody should work for them. Not even just because they are personally upset with them. Just they are all immoral. They're abominable. It's disgusting. We just watched 16 months of genocide, backed by all your parties. Nobody should work for these people. Anyway, do actual education. China has fully. Okay, let's move on though. Instead of just me being mad. Do actual education. China has fully roboticized AI automated facilities turning out flying cars. Teachers have been screwed. See number 2. Actually, see number 3. That's what I meant. But okay. So if you want to reindustrialize, what do you need to do? Number 3. I gotta wrap this up. Or number 5. Do actual education. China has fully roboticized AI automated facilities turning out flying cars. Teachers have been screwed, along with all other essential workers, because you do need people you need education work. Teachers have been screwed. Kids graduate illiterate. 56, I think it's up to 60 or 65% of the U.S. can't read above 6th grade level, and dropping. Okay, so colleges or hedge funds masked as places of learning. H-1B brains clued in to the erroneous American dream. So the H-1B visas, the Indians and the Chinese and the people around the world, they're not going to be coming to America. Not just because you're literally so anti-immigrant right now. You just a mask off. I mean, U.S. always does mistreat its immigrants, but it's just like every day waking up and threatening and deporting, and just being brutal to immigrants, separating families. And the thing is, the U.S. needs immigrants. I made this point in our previous videos, but the most of the essential work and the work that's done that really needs to be done in America is immigrants doing it. Whether it's driving trucks, I mean, not just janitor and agricultural, but that's super necessary too. But the custodial work, the agricultural work, a lot of the assembly, what industry remains is a lot of immigrants, but they also do the tech, right? All of the deep sea competitors in AI, all the AI team is all immigrants from China. It's like that's why it's the whole joke. I made a video about that a month ago. Half the AI race is Chinese that immigrated to America versus Chinese still in China. So if you want to make anything high tech, science, pharmaceuticals, like Indian immigrants are doing that. You need immigrants for all this stuff. Well, you don't need them, but U.S. exploits immigrants for all of the essential jobs to a large extent. Okay, and part of that is, well, if we don't educate in America, this is actually the immigrant. If other countries educate, we don't got to spend on education. We take that money and put it in our pocket. Other countries can send their educated people to America, or we'll steal their educated people from Africa, from Asia, from all around the world. You all come to America. Y'all can go to California. You can go to New York, and we'll use all of your education system. Right? That's a modern neoliberal imperialist strategy. We'll use all of those highly educated people to do the work that needs education, the high STEM level jobs, and that way we won't spend that money, and we won't have educated people. We have to spend that money, and we'll still get the benefits of having that educated class do these jobs, right? And then we can threaten them however much. That's all of Elon's team. It's all H-1B visas, right? So, but now, those people are cluing in that their American dream is a lie. The Chinese dream is real. And the American dream is a lie. Capitalism is a lie. They're figuring that out. They want to make money. They want to like have a good life. But they're like, if I come to America, I'm just going to get deported again. I'm going to get beaten up for being an immigrant. I'm going to be assaulted for being Chinese, for being Asian in the street. Anti-Asian racism is already blowing up. It's going to get worse. It's getting worse. America is not booming. The jobs are not paying well there. So they're figuring this out. And they don't want to come. Like the amount of people that are coming in is way down. The Democrats and Republicans both have an incentive to always portray migration to America as high, and there's lots of people coming, right? Now the Democrats will go, it's so great, so many people are coming because we're so not racist and we're so free and we're so good. Everyone just loves America. And the Republicans are like, so many immigrants are coming, it's destroying the white man world, and we have to kick them all back out, right? But both sides have all of the fake one party state with two faces, Democrats and Republican side, have an incentive to always portray America as super enticing, super loved, just so many people want to come and are always coming, and we're just full of immigrants. All sides want that because they all need that. That's why Trump, just like DeSantis banned immigrants from working in construction for like 1 week in Florida, and there was a collapse of Florida's GDP, and then he lifted it. This is the secret. Republicans know and they love immigrants, and then they just get elected. After Trump got inaugurated, because of the ICE raids, all of these white Texas and Oklahoma ranches, white-owned businesses started collapsing because they were not just because the immigrants stopped showing up to work because they were afraid of getting deported by ICE, just because of the overt. Biden and Obama both deported more than Trump by a factor of 2, right? And it's probably, I don't know where it is now. Like Trump is doing all kind of new things. I don't know exactly where it's going to come. We'll have to see where it is. But Trump president first, he actually deported less, right? But he talked about it more because he's the white guy's party and they want to make America fascist. It already exists. We're going to keep doing fascism and keep propping up white supremacy, and we're going to just win some votes from all the constituencies that we always lie to. But the thing is, all U.S. capitalists need immigrants to work their exploitative system because that is the maximum. That's the way that you can get more work. And it's not good. I'm not saying it's good. I'm saying that the way the U.S. exists, it exploits other places' education that function better than America. It exploits the lack of power that somebody who doesn't have a passport in America, they can always be threatened. They can be beaten. They can be brutal. This is what people don't realize. It's not just kicking them back out. You can like beat these people. They do it in Hawaii in the illegal U.S. private capitalist corporations that Maui Pineapple. They literally they like imprison like inside their facilities. Immigrants, you can do anything to them. They're like a black site. Being an immigrant in America is like being in Guantanamo to a certain extent. Whatever, you cannot get recourse. You cannot, because you are off the books, right? So immigrants are treated like slaves. It's not quite exactly the same as chattel slavery, but they're treated like slaves because there's nothing that they can do, because they can always, the white boss, or sometimes not even white boss, right, who owns a restaurant that has under the table, it's actually in Hentified. If you say anything, I'm going to beat you up. I'm going to punch you in the face. If you say anything, I'll call ICE. It's in Die Hard, right? You do what I say, I'm going to call immigration, right? So all you got to do is, like, oh no, but I need this life. What is going to happen to my children, right? You can threaten people. Just the threat of being separated from their own children. What would you do to not have your children taken away from you if you have children? Like, who do you love? Like, your girlfriend, your boyfriend, a parent, a cousin, your brother, your sister, somebody you love. What would you do if somebody threatened to take them away from you? What if they said, you're going to work for half the pay, or I'm going to steal your partner from you, and you're never going to see him again? In fact, I'm going to put him in another country, right? What would you do? And there's no recourse. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can do. Okay, so that's actually the power, is you can pay people $1 or $3 an hour because of their immigration status. Right? Now, if you put them in prison, then you're going to take 25 cents an hour because now you're in prison. Right? Now you're just a slave. But if you don't have you can't really have everybody in prison. You need some people to be exploited in home care work. You need line cooks, right? You need firefighters are slaves in prison, but so you see how, like, so the U.S. needs immigrants. It needs quote unquote illegal immigrants to keep exploiting and harming and maximally ripping off its global workforce, or the global workforce that falsely believe America is great or a good country or has a dream or has any hope, right? Europe, all colonizer countries Britain needs Nigerian. Europe needs Africans and Arabs. They don't want to admit it, but that's the reality, right? But they do the same thing. The right party says we got to kick all these Arabs and Africans out, and the Liberal Party goes, we love all Africans, Arabs, keep coming. Both parties need them because both parties are capitalist, racist, imperialist, hell parties, and the West is cancer. So anyways, colleges are hedge funds, massive. So, but also you have to do it. If you don't do education, so that's a long story to say. This is why they don't do education. Because we're going to bring people in. If you want people to but also that's not enough. You don't. If you really want to big time industrialize, you really want to have the level of competence in manufacturing. You're going to need like a whole entire educated workforce to do, because a lot of industrial work is not handcraft. It's the robots. The way the phones are made, the way Xinjiang cotton is made is what with Uyghurs and other people of Xinjiang operating AI, engineering and maintaining AI operated robots that are automatically driving up and down without drivers, roboticized cotton harvesters, collecting cotton and planting the cotton. You can watch videos of this on Douyin or on a Xiaohongshu or on Chinese social. There's Chinese on social media, so they don't, right. So they have completely lights out factories in China. To manage, but you still need workers. Even in that, you need workers to be programming, to maintaining, to be inspecting. They have electricians, unitary robots that walk up to the electrical power meters, and they do like the full-on humanoid robots that are doing the work of electricians. People who need 4-year degrees, like you need an electrician degree to do that. They have robots doing that. Automated robots, humanoid bipedal robots doing the surveying and the checking of the plugs. Maybe not all the work, but all the routine work of an electrician, right? And they're just getting started. Okay, so in the factories, it's basically 100% automated to a large extent, but you still need educated workforce in science and tech, engineering and math, and all subjects to manage that. You don't pay the teachers enough. I was a teacher. I wasn't paid enough. That's why I don't teach for the United States anymore. You don't pay the teachers enough. Kids, they're being pushed through. Kids are graduating illiterate. And there's so many. I don't even have time to go into all the problems of education, right? But there's a whole host of them that you need to deal with. But a lot of it is, the society doesn't. And I talked about this with the Vivek Ramaswamy comment on we don't value education. We don't value nerds. We value jocks and slackers, people who didn't study and partied. That's another whole the culture that celebrates that, which is slightly different from Gen X nowadays, but it's not. It's a lot of it's reverting backwards. The culture that doesn't value education, which the U.S. as a whole doesn't. It values wealth. It values people who look cool and who talk about themselves the loudest, like Donald Trump and Elon Musk. Elon is a fake nerd, right? You're not going to have an educated population, right? And you also have to have the education has to be funded. The education department just got cut. Now, even before that, education wasn't properly funded. And not just funded, the money that goes into education has to actually go to the teachers. Giving USAID and giving the Department of Education money, and giving universities money, and then the kids, the money that goes to the universities, it pays for $500,000-$600,000 salaries for administrators. That is education funding, right? Just another example. The United States gave $10 million to the University of Hawaii, but it went to a U.S. Air Force, anti-Chinese missile facility. That's not education. That's warmongering, calling it education. So a lot of this money the Democrats call it education because it sounds good. They label it as that, but it's actually money going to a lot of this education in universities is going straight to capitalist profiteering, and it's going to warmongering and all kind of other horrible things. That's not education, right? That is called hedge funds masquerading as places of learning, right? It's called capitalist exploitation with a scholastic, graduate tassel on top of it. That's not education. Education is like people learning the principles of physics, of science. That's education, right? Education doesn't have to cost so much money necessarily. Some of it costs money, but what it needs is the people. It's the same. Like you need, one of the things you need industrial workers getting a good deal. Like you need to have workers getting free housing, free quality. Teachers should get free housing and free quality meals. Why are teachers living in their car? The average U.S. teacher is like living in their car, rationing out cans of tuna fish just to teach grade school. Okay, so the average teacher quits after like less than 5 years. It's usually in a year they're already gone because of how horrible the conditions are of the schools, how hard it is to teach in these classrooms, and how horrible the pay is. So you will need good deals for all of the working class, including an essential working class, which includes the industrial laborers. Every teacher should have free food, free housing, and free all the materials they need: pens, pencils. Teachers have to routinely pay massive out of pocket to buy their own printing paper, their pens, their paint brushes, and everything that they need. Right? It's ridiculous. I tell you, I was teaching I taught in the U.S. system for 10 years or less than 10 years. It was a nightmare, So education has been broken in the U.S. and in the West, I would argue, for the last decades and decades. The West never really had an education system, really. It's only had a conditioning system and babysitting system. That's not education. Okay, it's a system to make sure people sign up for the U.S. military and are chained to their mortgages with multi-hundred thousands of dollars of student debt. And Ronald Reagan's economic director literally said, we can't have an educated population. We'll have to have them extremely controlled by dumping them all into this massive ball and chain of debt and then yanking them around by it. That's not education. That's blackmail with massive profit seeking. So the West, there's so much that has to be done to even try to do this. Public health. Okay, now we're on to that. I got to wrap this up. Yeah. Okay, but we'll blast through this. Public health. Okay, another reason why the United States cannot reindustrialize. Okay, this is just the number 6. This is how bad it is. Public health. Everyone has had a BSL-3 pathogen shred their cells, omletify their neurons, and a perma hacking with COVID-induced AIDS. Okay, that's AIDS stands for, in case you don't know this, acquired immune deficiency syndrome. Okay, you can get that from the human immune virus, HIV, but you can also get that from, you guessed it, your good old friend Corona. Millions are so unwell they can barely do keyboard. That's why you're sick all the time. Millions are so unwell they can barely do keyboard busy work at their David Graeber bullshit job, and you want them sewing clothes or engineering unitary grade bots. That's just sick. Okay? So, I mean, people are tired and they're sick. And also, like, literally sick. Like, everybody I talk to that isn't, like, super, like, very hardcore masking and distancing and taking many precautions, everybody I talk to, they're like, I've been sick for 2 months straight. And I haven't been not sick for more than 2 weeks for the last, years. And everybody's pretending like they're fine, but they're not. You're not, this is still a problem too. You can't have people that have long COVID that are out there unable to get out of bed and be up for for more than 2 hours or less. That's not conducive to you want an industrial workforce? You can't handle a deindustrialized workforce that is, got measles plus, RSV and COVID round 20. They can barely show up for work. They have to use ChatGPT, freaking Torment Nexus, Ghibli generated AIs to make their PowerPoint. Here's my Ghibli AI. I gotta go back to sleep for the next 22 hours. How are you gonna do actual work when you have people doing bullshit? I mean, I'm not saying that like you're a bad person because you can't do work because you got long COVID. I'm saying like getting everybody super disabled and sick is not conducive, which is what the U.S. has been doing by allowing the spread, benefiting pharmaceutical companies, biotech, trying to do planetary biowarfare on the working class and on China and Russia in particular, that backfiring, try to weaponize this, every step of the way. I mean, I've got like at least 6 Silver Spoon videos on this channel about pandemic. I don't have time for all of it, but one of the impacts of that, when it's disproportionately impacted places like the U.S. and the West, the capitalist countries, the East Asian countries, China did really well on that. Vietnam did really well on that. Vietnam had like 0 or less than 20 cases for like a year. Okay, China had like the number 1 in the world containment zero COVID policy until like it was basically becoming impossible towards the after several years. But they still have better policies. They could do better certainly, but they're still like when people are sick in China, A, people wear masks and it's not stigmatized. B, when people are sick, they stay home because they can afford to. Which is another thing. Your capitalist hyper-exploitative system means people can't afford to stay home when they're sick. So people are working with COVID, reinfecting everyone with a disease that's going to make them so disabled they can't do deindustrialized office jockey jobs, let alone industrial jobs. This is, you see how like number 6 kneecap is just one item on this 10-point list kneecaps the entire U.S. industrialization pipe dream that Donald Trump and J.D. Vance are smoking, or whoever wants to do that in America has been smoking. Okay, people are not gonna do anything. This is not a failure to meet reality. Half your country is like this close to death. They can hit some buttons on the key. Thank God they have a bullshit job, because if they had a real job, they're so disabled they couldn't do it. You know what I'm saying? I mean that's like just sad. I wish more people took this more seriously, but they don't. 90% of people don't take it seriously. The COVID conscious is like 80. It's like 12 to 10% of people. Hopefully they gets more. Hopefully becomes more. But even if you want 100%, okay, the government, all U.S. parties are gonna be, okay, everybody, we need to mask. We need to all get vaccinated. We're gonna like try to do zero COVID like China did. We're gonna like, even if you want 180, you already got millions, tens of millions. It's unknown. It's just at least tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of people that are not capable of doing very hard work for 8 hours a day. You don't have the people that are well enough, because they have 5 years of a organ, neuron, brain, and immune system destroying virus. Even if they don't get another round of COVID, they already have long-term permanent AIDS. And there's why they're sick all the time. And you're not going to be doing the kind of hard work you want them to be doing, because they're just getting RSV and flu every other week. You know what I'm saying? It's just Okay, so you okay? Let's move on. Let's wrap this up. Use tech appropriate. Like we got many videos here on the pandemic that Holly I'm sure has dropped. Use tech appropriately. Bad word salad, Gen AI writing emails, doing schoolwork degrades intellect and creativity, pollutes infosphere with disinfo and wastes energy and CPU needed to help cure cancer, streamline electric vehicle production, and automate vertical farms like China does. Okay, so if you really want to do, I mean, this is a whole. I mean, again, one of these is enough to wipe out the U.S. Right? These whimsical, quixotic dreams of reindustrialization. This is another one. Bad word salad. Everyone is using ChatGPT. Kids are using ChatGPT to write essays. How are you going to have people that are going to be programming unitary grade bots and doing this advanced, very, very intense? Chinese get like 8 hours of how to use DeepSeek and various like productive AI. That's the whole thing. Like you gotta like software as a whole, programming and code has an important place in the society. That AI is how they get their factories automated. But if you have people that are using generative AI to write these broken, incorrect, fraudulent essays, they're not even writing essays. They're not doing real math work. They're just having AI do this work for them. They're writing their own emails for them. They're like having the AI be friends for their friends, and they're having the AI like write their own love notes to their partners, and among other things, but also write like actual scientific reports, do actual engineering work for them. So if you have people doing that, which is what the U.S. is doing, they're having schools and offices. The majority of people are now just using it on a regular basis, right? That is an atomic bomb going off in the brains of every American person and every person that's doing this, right? How are you going to end up? How are you going to have competent people that are going to do real complex work? Not just in the sewing of clothes and of the making of shoes, but you're gonna need all those people that have to work on that whole industrial line. Okay, you can't ask ChatGPT, the 25 degree of freedom hydraulic robotic arm on the production line of the American iPhone factory seems to have malfunction at joint 3, 4, 5, and 6. Fix that. You can't be asking AI to do that kind of stuff. AI can do things, but you know what I'm saying. But you have to be using. The AI has to be used in the ways that is actually conducive to making the world better, and doesn't counterproductively dumb down and de-skill your people and your workforce. You know, that's like a very complicated thing. That's actually not immediately obvious that the society has to deal with. That's like, it's actually pretty tough to figure out how much and where should the AI be used, and what kind of AI should we use if we're going to use that, right? The U.S. isn't even talking about that. In China, they have discussions and debates about this kind of stuff in their own internal. They have rules. Everything that's AI, generative AI, has to be labeled generative AI. If you use AI to write any report, do any math, any schoolwork, or college work that's done with AI at any level, you get your whole degree revoked. So it's just kind of like the drug policy in China, because if you have drugs in your body, it's not good to a productive economy. That's part of the secret. China isn't as drugged up on marijuana is not the worst of them, but you have meth, you got all kind of hard drugs, and Americans are just the biggest drug consuming country in the world. And China is very strict on a lot of these, the worst of these drugs, because it knows it needs to keep the people as healthy as possible, because they're not going to be as productive. And if they have to pick up after people that are meth addicts or on opium, because they had to deal with that for a century. Part of their immiseration was a century of drug-forced opium consumption. So anyway, if your body is polluted, if your body has COVID, that's also going to make you less productive. And if your brain is not capable of performing, because you have relied on AI too much to do your thinking and your creative, intellectual, inventing, science work for you, technology work for you, which the U.S. because the there's not. My point is like there's ways to use AI, but there's not a discussion. I made this point longer also in other videos. There's not even a talk about it. It's just more AI. The AI is just put out there in the U.S. and in the West and the capitalist world because the same people at the top, the plutocracy is invested in NVIDIA and in big AI companies purely for their own selfish benefit, not because they even believe that AI is going to make the world a better place or Skynet is going to destroy the world. They don't care about any of that. All they care about is more AI chips being sold, more AI, more stonk going up. It's nothing to do with how it's going to make the world better or worse. So what they're happening is just if more people put AI and use it in school, they sell more NVIDIA chips. If they use it in office, it doesn't matter if the student body is getting more and more worse and worse at writing, worse and worse at thinking, worse and worse because they're having the robot do their entire work for them, right? That's whether the office workers are de-skilling themselves, they're unable to write video essays, they're unable to write essays, reports, do science because they're having the AI generate their work for them, which is what employers have been doing. They're saying, when you come to this office, we need you to use the AI all day because it can increase your productivity, right? And in some cases, like maybe the AI can help with certain kinds of tasks, like figuring out, going through the possibility space of cancer medications, stuff like that. Automating the vertical farming of this very complex garden with like 100 layers of tomato plant on top of each other, right? There's many videos of this. This is what they use AI. Some of the things they use AI for in China. Automating the shipping, automating a factory, right? But like automating your own creativity. Here, when I push this button, I made this Ghibli picture of myself with my family, playing racquetball. That like, or here's me smoking pot, being broke, Ghiblified. Now I'm an artist, right? Or like, here, I pushed this button and I wrote a scientific report on gravity, and it's like the AI just like took the Einstein article and just like churned it back out. What did you do? Oh, well, I hit the button and I wrote it. I collaborated with the AI to write that report. I mean, that's not gonna. And if it's that's not that's not gonna help you become a better scientist if that's what you're doing, right? It's like okay, well, this is like a phone tree does work, right? I got to call a phone tree this past week, and it's like press 1 to speak to an agent, press 2 if you have questions about your account, right? It's like, so I mean, like that is that's work that an AI technical kind of software is doing that, right? But if it's like, if the AI is okay, well, press 1 to press 1 to have ChatGPT generate what looks like a paragraph that is a legal case, which is what people are doing, and it's like even the legal system and all these systems are figuring out that this actually doesn't work. But the people that run the society don't care that whether the use of AI is causing a net benefit or a net negative to the society. All they care about is you using more because they're invested in the chips. There's more chips is more for them, and that's exploding. But so anyway, long story short, that's you would need to use the AI in the right way, but that you can't start doing that until you have complete systems change, because until you do that, the system is just going to force people. Well, I mean, individually people can do things and encourage people to not use, the certain kind of Gen AI in a negative way, right? But without the full systems change, the elites are going to keep forcing this stuff into schools and into workplaces that is going to be counterproductive to building any kind of society, let alone a reindustrialized one with competent, skilled people. Okay, anyways, stop wasting resources on wars, genocide, and colonial plunder. It was always immoral enslaving kids in cobalt mines, and soon it will be impossible with BRICS. No more stolen resources and cheap migrants. China spends on infrastructure and people, and the U.S. on bombing hospitals. So, I mean, obviously, this goes without saying. You're wasting money on wars. How are you going to reindustrialize? Okay, you're wasting so much money on this imperialism and colonialism and wars. Nobody wants to. People are doing like actionists, and people are not working or actively like Luddite destroying the production, because what you're producing is doing mass child unalivings, right? So like, again, what you do, like what you industrializing for also matters. a military industrial complex that's about going around keeping capitalist, colonialist evil in place, you just morally, you simply should not want to do that. Many people will not, and millions of people are choosing not to work at these places, or boycott these places, boycott, divest, and sanction. They're directly attacking these. So if you want to, again, this ties back into number 4, right? It rebuild intergenerational trust, right? Root out classist, racist culture too, because part of it is based on racism. Oh, we can kill those people. We can kill 600 million Chinese by blowing up those Three Gorges Dam because you know what? They're all Chinese anyway. You just alienated like everybody that's competent at industrialization and economics and science and tech and engineering and math. And also you just make all your children think, oh, what is wrong with this country that wants to just kill hundreds of millions of innocent people? It's almost like the West is based upon killing mass numbers of innocent people in order to terrorize everyone into giving all the wealth to them and their elites in particular, which is the truth. But when people realize, oh my God, you're unaliving all these children in Palestine, I don't want to work for that. I don't want to program for that. I don't want to do industrial anything for that. I want to produce widgets for that of any kind. It's not, it's not, so it's not just a bad deal. It's an immoral industrialization. And also you're not spending it on actual goods. You're spending it on, a lot of this money is just going straight to 90% of the military industrial complex is going straight to executives' pay packages, and it's going straight into bank accounts. It's not going even into producing any weapons. That's why the F-35 is a broken piece of garbage, right? That's why all the U.S. Missiles can't even intercept a $2,500 Yemeni indigenously produced drone. So anyway, these are all that's 100 complicating factors in just this one. And finally, there's a million reasons. There's a million things the U.S. needs for reindustrialization, but the most important is probably number 1: get rid of the parasites. They are being so externally by real neo-colonization and de-dollarization, but it will take mass organization and struggle internally to fully deworm. So, I mean, all of this ultimately it means you got to do that. External and the world. I didn't even get into it, but just this past week, it has failed. The tariff plan has completely backfired. Trump just called it. He lost his tariff war, and I called it that he would. Trump he exempted phones, computers, and chips from new tariffs. That's basically the majority of things that China imports. So it's complete failure. And you can't just revert back to where we were 2 weeks ago, right? Everyone has seen the U.S. as a chaotic, unhinged country. Businesses need stability. They can't do business with that. This is going to be catastrophic for the United States and its economy. The U.S. could tariff China, and I said a week ago, U.S. could tariff China at 4 trillion%. They wouldn't flinch. Less than 3% of the GDP is exports to the U.S. And the West is run by supreme clowns. This is what CNN. It's not just Fox. It's all parties. CNN and Fox, Republican and Democrat, are out there going, she can only stay supreme leader if people are employed. America is the number 1 economy on earth with all the cards. We will not have it forever. It's time to squeeze China's heads into the wall. The U.S. literally did that. They smashed their head into the Great West. Xi Jinping said that too. If an external force wants to attack China, you will smash your head into the Great Wall of Steel. And that's what they've done. They're trying to squeeze China's heads into the wall. And America squeezed its head into the Great Wall of socialism with Chinese characteristics. And now the U.S. is cooked. The stonks have exploded. The number one, this is, I'll kind of go through this real fast. Africa, Asia, Latin America, the number 1 trading partner for almost everyone, but collapsing U.S. vassals is China. No amount of Trump tariffs can change that. This is only what he's doing is only accelerating this process of de-dollarization and everyone going away from the United States and more into BRICS, more into China, more into multipolarity, away from U.S. unipolarity and hegemony. China has, if you're any of these countries, you're going, China has 0 tariffs on us. U.S. is putting these big, U.S., even if it it put these 25, 30, 67, 90% tariffs on all these countries, and then it suddenly dropped them back. Just the fact that they did that, even if they remove those tariffs again, those countries have been attacked. They had to rapidly try to figure out how they're going to reorient their whole economy, right? This was an attack. They've already been attacked economically, right? And the thing is, Trump didn't roll. They are still being attacked because Trump still put 10% across the board. Okay? China has 0 tariffs for all the majority of these global south countries. So it's all this is going to do is push what this which is really what matters, is going to push everyone more and more into China's orbit, right? And away from the United States, which is only going to deindustrialize the U.S. more. The self-defeat is bipartisan. Democrats' proxy war and sanctions on Russia. I talked about this earlier this week, but just quickly, Democrats had a proxy war and sanctions on Russia, which backfired, pushing Russia, China together, turbocharging de-dollarization BRICS, and the BRICS has already vastly got past the Western white colonizer world, also known as the G7, led by the United States. And Russia's growing trade with China has just been exploding. Russia was growing 4% a year when Europe was 1% or negative percent for Germany during the Ukraine war, right? Because so what, like, you could, it's the Trump economic war in China is like the Democrats' proxy war and also sanctions, which is economic war on Russia. Did that work? And Russia is 10 times smaller than China, and it didn't work. And you think you're going to beat China with this strategy? It was just, unhinged. Only people that only listen within their echo chamber of conservative or liberal or whatever Western U.S. propaganda, echo chamber they're in, would believe this was going to work. Star Spangled Colonial Capitalist Hegemon is cooked. This is the dollar market. This is a couple days ago. Dollar market crashed. Just to recap this week. So we're going to win any second now. Trump pushed the tariffs to 130%, 134%. The dollar crashed. The bond market exploded. Asia's buying gold and dumping U.S. Treasuries. So the stocks exploded. The biggest one is when there's economic trouble for the last 70 years, the U.S. hegemony is based upon the U.S., especially since getting off the gold standard and petrodollar in the 1970s. When there's trouble, everybody invests in U.S. Treasuries because the U.S. government is the guarantor, the ultimate safest bet. And everyone, including U.S. allies like Japan, were dumping the U.S. They're getting rid of U.S. Treasuries. So that would be the end of, if that kept going, that could have been the end of the U.S. dollar hegemony really fast. That would have been the end of whatever exorbitant privilege the U.S. had. Trump did do a kamikaze self-immolation, self-destruction of the United States. So that happened. And now he has since called off the Trump said Xi Jinping is going to call me any second now. He's going to call me any second. China never called. China said, we don't even care. You can raise the tariffs higher. We would just ignore it. Americans, there was a whole Reddit thread where Americans are saying, I can't get the basic bamboo and products for my small business. I'm going under, right? Millions of American small businesses and the large businesses were all being hurt too. But millions of Americans were just like losing their entire business because they rely on purchasing raw products, whether food, it's electrical cables, it's plastic, it's machinery, and it's like 10 times cheaper from China or 4 times cheaper from China. And I cannot buy American products to keep my business going. And so the United States was exploding. It was just like hemorrhaging. And it's going to keep hemorrhaging, right? Because countries have already figured out new supplies. One example. It was Daniel Jumber said, there's like hops, there's American hops and there's American like beer products and other food products that Chinese are still buying, or people even in New Zealand and Australia are buying. When the tariffs happened, he said all of his friends who are in this like various, they sell various kinds of beer, like they just had to seek out because they couldn't not produce for like a week or a month or who knew how long. They've already found alternative suppliers other than the U.S. because of the tariff war. They're not going to just go back to the U.S. What if Trump decides next week, I'm going to tariff you again, right? Again, like this instability, right? This instability, this chaos, like how much is it going to cost next week is not conducive to business. People don't want to go back just because of the chaos. And also they've already been harmed by the tariffs. So anyway, but long story short, this is just the tariffs itself are self-defeating, and they definitely is not conducive to reindustrialization. And yeah, that's the end. Would you like to support us, help us out, the Silver Spook Cooperative, to keep doing this education with a one-time direct donations to ko-fi.com/silverspook. And if you also, you can help us out at patreon.com/Neofeud in an ongoing fashion, and also give us ongoing support at the Silver Spook Cooperative. We don't do industrial physical product production, but we do make video games and sell those. Luckily, digital products are not tariffed, thank goodness, so we can still sell those around the world. Unlike $30,000 iPhones and $25,000 the $15,000 computers and overpriced everything that's gonna be all the products coming in or leaving the U.S. So anyways, long story short, if you want to help us out at Silver Spook Patreon, you can give us direct support, get access to behind the scenes of what we're working on. I'm currently finishing up. We actually recently cast our friend and also left tuber Mexi in the role of one of the main characters in the Silver Spook in Neofeud 2. So yeah, we got Mexi's going to be playing the daughter of the richest millennial in the entire galaxy, turned revolutionary. Mexi is not the daughter of the richest millennial in the entire galaxy, but I'm pretty sure is a millennial and also is the daughter of somebody. So you can also get access to the Silver Spook Discord when you become a Patreon. And also, here's some of the work I was doing on I'm editing all the audio files now. I got like so much to do. It's 140,000 words of dialogue. It's a lot of editing, and it's a lot of back and forth and voice acting. Direction I'm gonna have to be doing. Anyways, but yeah, it's gonna be good. If you want to help us out, we also do our own non-AI generated art. This is me painting Miyazaki being disgusted by AI generated art, and calling it an insult to life itself. And help us keep doing this work at Silver Spook Cooperative by becoming a Patreon. Get access to Silver Spook Discord, and of course, Silver Spook University, which is over 1,000 hours of the content we have produced, categorized according to topics, economics, politics, history, and etc. And it's what you need to know. What do you need to teach your children today when Western lies about past, present, and future permeate formal schooling, books, and media? And so giving you what you need, what we feel you need, obviously from our perspectives. In the Twitter threads on Hawaii history, also in video form on various parts of the world, Africa, Asia, Turtle Island, or the Americas, Pacific focus, economic history, race and gender focus, analysis of the West itself and dismantling imperium, and artificial intelligence, social media, and lots of other fun topics that, it's basically most of what we have on this channel, but just categorized, plus other output we have elsewhere in text. And you can also you can help us out by grabbing Neofeud, which is on sale at the moment at Steam for 70% off. Every sale does help us keep doing this work. So if you like retro games that critique techno-feudal hellscapes, comedic cyberpunk game, homeless worker, a cyborg social worker for homeless robots, an ex-con global drug dealer, and an ex-trillionaire princess trying to overthrow a global collapsing neo-feudal post-capitalist
second-class citizens
with no industrialization whatsoever.
Humans are sentient persons by default, ma'am. They have personhood by heredity.
Sprawl.
There are thousands upon thousands of overqualified slum dwellers.
You can give us
my
help.
peon.
You can also get the
Don't
game
you get it?
in your Steam library.
This wasn't a
on
job.
Steam.
It was
Like the
always
game,
just an excommunication sentence.
as it helps us to get the game discovered in the Steam algorithm. You can also get Neofeud on itch.io for Windows and Mac and Linux on the itch.io website. And it's also, you can get Decolonators, where you play a retro arcade game where you fight colonialism, and in a video game. And of course, you can also get Neofeud 2 is also has a new, slightly updated. I'm revamping and working on the public facing sites for Neofeud 2. So this is Neofeud 2. We're currently recruiting still for voice acting. So if you want to get into voice acting, actually you might need a few more like masculine sounding voices. We have a lot actually. We could actually use all kinds of voices. I need a good villain voice. I need like a good villain dude voice though. At least one. I need someone who's like good at doing villains. Because I don't want to also do the villain. I'm doing the main protagonist. I'm the hero protagonist. I don't want to do the villain too. So anyways, you can voice act, and this is the Neofeud 2 site. If you want to voice act, contact me anywhere, including silverspook at Gmail, or anywhere else I am on the internet, including in the Discord. I'm opening the door a little wider just because I got more roles to fill than I think we have enough actors for at this point. Anyways, but yeah, you can get Neofeud on itch.io as well, and you can also get Womanhood, which is a book by Holly, who was raised in right-wing Christian culture, critiquing that through a story from Mary's perspective in the Bible. You can also follow on Xiaohong Shu at silverspook, and of course, as you can follow on Mastodon and on at silverspook games at mastodon.social and at silverspook games at wandering.shop. Or you can follow both. And you can follow on Twitter at silverspook guy, silverspook games minus Ian Silver. And we're also on the Blue Sky and all over the place. And you can also follow Holly at Allergic to Blue. Holly, of course, is married to myself, mama of two, and sharing important information. If you want to reindustrialize, we need people to be well and with immune systems so they're not sick 75% of the month, which is not going to be good for factory for industrial production or maintaining the robots. If you get brain omeletification, how are you supposed to program the extremely complex software and engineer the engineering for the AI automation of these complex manufacturing bots? You know what I'm saying? So let's mask up for reindustrialization. Among other things. Okay, anyways, thank you to our Patrons for your ongoing support. Without your support, it's hard to keep doing this work, so thank you so much to all of these amazing people. And yeah, really great to have you here. We're trying to get our Patreon up to trying to get to $700 if we can. We're at 517. That's our goal. We can't set goals on Patreon anymore, so that's what we want to get, so we can not be worried about keeping the lights on in our industrial production house here at Silverspook Cooperative. We still need the lights on because I'm not a fully robotic with infrared vision yet. Anyways, thank you very much, and until next time, keep a mirror shades polished, be excellent to each other, and have a good post-industrial, maybe one day industrial life. Industrial life. You listen to industrial music, you just really identify as that. You wear stompy boots. Have a good industrial society.